always liked about pitching. I but that's okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. People should just do what they think is right. Oh, you are?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much.
I love Syria. Yeah, right. God bless you.
Mr. President.
It's interesting. The Bosnians and the Kosovars in America have been some of our strongest supporters, and I'm very honored by that. Thank you.
Mr. President, is real reform possible? Healthcare, education, is real reform possible to get through Washington?
Sure. It is more possible now
with the money influence.
You know, I think the real issue in healthcare is you know, but you don't want to have real reform is possible, but you have to elect somebody committed to it. I mean, one of the things that bothered me about these ads that the other campaign were running on health care is they were making the same points that the health insurance industry did 14 years ago. They looked like they were prepared and executed by the health insurance companies, and we can't have that.
It just seems that money seems to really dilute the possibility of real reform, it seems.
Well, it does, but we can get a lot. I mean, you know, if you look at what happened.
I mean, does McCain-Feingold have any teeth to it? There's work to be done.
No, we're not because of McCain-Feingold. The fundamental problem is the Supreme Court ruled, first of all,
Oh, good. Okay.
I don't know if you remember this years ago when we passed campaign finance reform, that there was no limit to how much of your own money you could pay, which that may be okay because there's no inherent conflict. But then they ruled that you couldn't stop these third-party committees. So the real problem is the third-party committees, you know, the 527s and all that. And
so that's the loophole.
And the other thing is the American people stopped supporting the election.
Public funding.
You know, the ultimate answer to this is to have adequate public funding for these elections. And if you don't, there has to be some penalty. For example, the federal government has basically given up the fairness doctrine, given up all this. So you have also the corporate interest behind all the media outlets.
I know. I can't.
Offsetting balance, just whatever argument exists in the blogosphere.
But that's for elections. How about for legislation? The money influence on legislation.
But
I'll let you ask it. I don't mind.
The Supreme Court decision basically say you can't stop people. They basically say money is speech. And so,
Lily to look up. So Lily, look up. Lily, look at mommy.
What you would have to do.
Look way up to the sky. Look at the sky.
There we go. Majority of the Supreme Court.
Did you get it?
They would revisit
Oh,
it.
good. I need to give you my
Because
email.
in an election, at least, for example, you could offset
Oh,
that.
you are? Okay.
If you, Congress can do a lot of things. They can say, okay, if you don't take
So
public
you're
funding,
easy to find?
it costs you twice as much now. Or something like that. In other words, they could do things around the candidates and their budgets. But there is no, under the current cases, I don't think they could abolish lobbying expenses or limit them to a certain amount of money or whatever. That's the fundamental problem. But you have to understand, it's still the cost of campaigns is the biggest problem. Because the truth is, most politicians are honest. The idea that they're all on the take is not true. The money and organized interest group issues affect at most 10% of these decisions at the edges. But it makes it harder to get like the big complicated pieces of legislation through because it's like being tied to an anthill, you know. Somebody's biting off this piece, somebody's biting off that piece.
Okay.
But the fundamental issue is if people think they can run for office, stay in, be relatively free of this. And it's good. Was McCain found gold in advance? Yes. Was this new ethics bill, did it do more good than harm? Yes. Will it solve the entire problem? No. One of the real problems, I tell somebody one of the partisanship problems in Washington is that most people in Congress are sleep deprived all the time, so they're mad. Aren't you more irritable when you're sleep deprived? I mean, we laugh about it, but the truth is, you think about what it's like. If you were a senator from a state in the Intermountain West where you had to raise $2 million to run for re-election, and you could only raise 10% of that in your state, and you're out all the time. If you're a house member,
something's wrong with that.
And you have to be in Washington during the week, you have to be home on the weekend, you have to figure out how to raise money in the middle.
Hey Lily, look up here again.
It used to be, when I was a young man and I went to work in the Senate for Senator Fulbright, they worked 7.5 to 8 months a year in Washington.
She's making
Time commercial airline traffic was relative to other expenses, and there was no expectation that a senator would go home every weekend. They were expected to have normal lives. They were expected to call their constituents back, in this case it'd be answer their emails or whatever, and go home during recesses, and then in a summer break they were supposed to go home and keep office hours and travel around the districts of their state. The rhythm of life was entirely different. And in a funny way, that made it possible. There were other issues there. We had the civil rights crisis and all that. But another thing that people have underappreciated about the possibility of getting things done in Washington is the physical and time demand of this constant race for money.
Yeah, they don't talk about that. That's not talked
the
about.
The space people have to sit down, have dinner, read books, think about things, talk to other people. You know, it's the whole thing. But the fundamental problem is the Supreme Court says really a speech that affects, you know, so you can pass a law that says a lobbyist can't buy you lunch. Or in this case, the new law, you got to be standing up when you eat whatever they buy. But you can't stop a law that says that they can't spend $3 million advertising in your state for exposition on my issue. That, I think, is the problem. And you know, other countries, for example, limit elections. In parliamentary session, they say the elections will be held 5 weeks after they're called. And there's a limit to what you can spend. Some of them are totally barred for private expenditures.
Matt, what would you do? Matt Smith.
Yeah, there is. Right now, there are a bunch of court decisions designed to limit that, but as you know, it doesn't really stand back.
Come here.
One of my best friends. He's the best. I adore him. He's the best. Thank you all.
Hey, let's unite for November, right? Whoever wins the Democratic nomination, let's unite behind the party, right?
That's
behind the candidate.
Can you get a picture?
Yeah.
Come on, really